Will, this is from Jason. Jason's American. He says, "Hey fellas, I love listening to you mostly because it reminds me so much of living in Australia. It's like riding in the backseat of a car with two Australians up front I can barely understand, but I love to listen to. It is so comforting. I left home in Kansas City when I was a young man and I went to live in a place called Newcastle, Australia. Honestly, the best year of my life. The ocean every day, surfing, meat pies, Tui's new, and it was breathtakingly beautiful."
It's a good part of the world, Newcastle.
It is. The language is hard, though. Here's my impression.
I'll be in Newcastle, in January. I should plug that. I'm doing my What You Talking About Will shows at the Newcastle Comedy Club. I'm taking over Wednesdays in Newcastle, so every Newcastle or the Newcastle area, and I'm at the Sydney Comedy Store doing those shows.
So he says, the language is hard, though. Here's my impression of me offering McDonald's to my Australian friend Shane. So I'll do the accents now just to differentiate between the two characters. Shane, are we going to McDonald's? You want a breakfast burrito? Oi, Maccas, fair income, mate. Had to rock up early and go to the physio and broke me sunnies because me newt was out of petrol, so I had to stop at the server, and then my thong broke, and I asked the Sheila if she had any break-in. She's like, no, I was getting all aggro. I'm sorry, buddy. I have no fucking idea what you just said. Do you want a breakfast burrito or not? Yeah. Me, shaking my head, walking up. Damn, I thought they spoke English here.
That's the best.
That's a fairly astute observation. He says, besides the language barrier, it was such a beautiful time. We took trips up the coast to Byron Bay and Fraser Island and the Great Barrier Reef, and down to Melbourne and Torquay because we saw Bells Beach from the movie Point Break.
Didn't look exactly like the movie Point Break.
or anything like the movie Point Break. Didn't see the big waves, but I had my first threesome that night with two wild Torquay women on the beach.
All right. Well, that's what we call our Torquay party.
I was reffing a beach volleyball at a place called Howzat, but it closed for a bit, so I had to work at this nasty chicken factory called Steggles.
Oh, yeah.
God damn, it was gross and it smelled horrible, but I met amazing friends there. One time we went to our friend from Steggles' 21st birthday out to her family's farm in the outback, and everyone passed around this dirty fucking farm boot and dumped beer and vodka and rum and more beer into that thing and sculled the whole boot of liquor. Man, that was some wild times. Like, this is sounding like the best trip. I don't know what length of time this happened over, but I am so into this story.
It's very Australian too, though, isn't it? Like, it does like feel like you've really had a more authentically Australian experience than many of Australians have.
But you know how, like, whenever they try and like make an Australian film and they need to cast an American for sales, and you've got to work out a justification. Like this could be Zac Efron. Like, Zac Efron apparently loves it in Australia, spends a bit of time here. You could make this film with Zac Efron, and to me, so far, it makes 100% logical sense.
And also, it's much more like Australian experience than how they try to portray what the Australian experience is. Like going to some party out in the bush and drinking rum out of a gumboot. Exactly.
The only thing that was crazier were those huge fucking birds that would swoop down. God damn, those things are scary. Newcastle has like woods on campus or some environmental shit. I don't know. But there are these scary fucking animals right there on campus, and the magpies would always swoop down and scare us Americans. I thought it was a xenophobic thing. They never attacked the Australians, only the Americans. We finally figured out it was because we all wore baseball caps all the time. And to be honest, I skipped a lot of classes. I didn't even buy textbooks. I bought a wetsuit and a Mark Richards surfboard and got a flat right next to the ocean. Like, this is, what's that? How Stella Got Her Groove Back. It's like the young man's version of How Stella Got Her Groove Back. Like, just moved to this like regional Australian town. He just has threesomes on the beach. He's just drinking out of gumboots, finds himself, quits school, gets a flat by the beach.
I mean, it sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, it really does. And it's all around the beach too. Everything good that's happened to him has happened on the beach.
From from the chicken factory, I would 100% go on this entire experience. If this was offered as like, you can go and have that, was his name Jason?
Jason, yes.
If you could have the Jason's uni experience, like holiday, I'm like, I'd sign up.
Well, this is where it shifts gears. So we've gone through this, like, whatever kind of genre film you want it to be. But this last paragraph is so beautiful and poignant. It's like a Richard Linklater film. It's like Before Sunrise. So he finishes. My roommate moved out, so I got 3 Swedish... It's not going where you think it's going. Because that's what I thought at first. After the threesome on the beach, I'm like, oh boy, here we go. But it doesn't. It's much more tasteful and beautiful than that. My roommate moved out, so I got 3 Swedish students to move in, and they were all beautiful, both the men and the women. Kristen was the one I liked the most. She had a Swedish boyfriend that lived nearby, but she would tell him he couldn't come in, and so she would just see him the next day. That's when I would smile listening to her say that, because I knew she would come to my room and lock the door behind her and we would make out. Still to this day, when I hear a door knocking, I think about that time in Australia. Oh, the door clicking, sorry. The night that she told me, "Du hock finna ögon." I don't know what those words mean, but I knew they were a compliment by the way her lips turned up and the way she looked at me like that. Back then I was young and athletic and handsome, and I devoured compliments, so I wanted to know what she said. But I just looked at her, tucking her short blonde hair behind her ears, and I let those beautiful words by a beautiful woman on that beautiful Australian night hang in the air. You could smell just a hint of her perfume that mixed with the smell of the salt in the air, and the warm breeze floated through the windows, and the sound of those famous Newcastle waves crashing nearby. I knew I had to remember this moment. I simulated shudders on an expensive camera with my eyes. I had to take it all in. I knew nothing would ever feel that good again. And I was right. Love you guys. Thanks for doing the podcast. Thanks for always being my 2 Australian friends in the front seat.
Man, that's like...
That was that last paragraph. So I got curious,
of
though,
course.
and it's like, what did she
Yes,
say?
absolutely. I like if you hadn't looked it up, I would need to immediately after the podcast.
Okay, so let me just check this out. So it's going to have to be Swedish to English, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Jason obviously listens, and it's kind of like the end of Lost in Translation. Do you need to know what Bill Murray said at the end? Should we just do a spoiler for Jason?
Well,
if you are
Jason,
listening?
we're about to look it up. I imagine that at some stage Jason's looked it up. But
Okay.
if he's never looked it up, if he's lived in a world where he does not want to know what it means, then Jason, turn off right now.
Yeah, okay. All right. So he's written it phonetically, so it might take a couple of goes to work
Again,
out what
he
exactly
can't
it is.
know how to write it. Oh, so it's phonetically, not okay. Yeah, all right. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a compliment.
Mhm.
Do you want to have a guess at what it is?
Give me what it is again.
It's a general specific compliment.
Yeah.
And then a specific physical compliment.
Yeah. Okay. But say the sentence again.
Well, I don't know what the actual Swedish is, but it's du hock. Heath heard du hock finna ögon.
Du hock finna ögon. You are a good kisser. You
No,
have nice hair. You have a good face.
More poetic, I would say, and complimentary than that, and quite a common compliment you would say to someone.
You are a handsome man.
You are beautiful, beautiful eyes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He said he was young and fit and athletic back then. Do you think, that's what I think the movie Before Sunrise captured so perfectly, is sometimes you'll just have those fleeting encounters. And it's great because real life didn't have to intrude on it. Right. It was just all possibility. It was just all magic.
That's exactly right. It's perfect because nothing else ever happened. And it's just, he's captured in that moment. This is like a good story. This whole story is such a good story.
Yeah, it was great. That's why I knew I had to read it out.
Yeah. It's like, this story is the best movie I've seen in the last 2 years.
To see the full video, join our Patreon.
Patreon.com/Tofop.